So today I'll be talking about Osamu Tezuka, and you're thinking, who in the heck is that, right? So Osamu Tezuka is what I consider to be the godfather of manga. And he was born in 1928. I'm now born in 1963, but if you talk to any Japanese person, man or woman, born between, I would say, 1928 through 1970s, there's not one Japanese that would not know this guy. This is how famous he is in Japan. Yet, he's virtually unknown in the United States. And I'll explain why that is, and then we'll go from there. So, this is kind of skinny of Tezuka. So maybe if you see some of his works, you'll go, oh, I know this guy. He's a manga artist, cartoonist, master animator, right? Considered godfather of the manga. And I would consider animation pioneer in Japan and possibly part of the world. He is a creator of Astro Boy, so we may now know, oh, I know this guy. He's the guy, right? And then, I don't know if you remember, maybe the older people my age remember the Kimba, the White Lion Saturday shows. It's maybe, because that's how I remember Kimba in the United States. The Princess Knight, not quite famous here in the United States, and Blackjack is very famous in Japan. It's what resurrected Tezuka's career after he had a serious slump. And now in Japan, it's blowing up because what they've done, when Tezuka died in 1989, he left a lot of works undone. So his production, who's still in business, took his work and let AI run it. So now you have an AI Tezuka collaboration that Blackjack's turned into. So it's gonna be pretty amazing. So I'm just gonna go over the recognizable characters. Is, this guy. They call it Astro Boy in the United States. I remember as a Atomu. So he's the first robot back then that was created, a robot with a heart. A robot who is a boy, a little boy at heart. And he do nothing but goodness in his heart. He likes what's right the wrong and protect the weak. But if you look at him real closely, who does he remind you of a little bit? The little boy a robot or puppet that wants to be a little boy, right? Pinocchio, exactly, because Tezuka was very heavily influenced by Walt Disney. I think they were born probably maybe within a decade apart, but he would admit Tezuka did watch Bambi 80 times, that he'll talk about in his biography. And yet, you'll find that kind of a cliche word, circle of life. What Tezuka got from Disney, Disney took from Tezuka later in the years. I'll cover that too. So, Astro Boy, the little girl up there is Uran, because Tezuka named all his characters after chemical properties. So, and then this guy here, using this. This guy here is Dr. Ochanomizu. And this guy here, Dr. Evil. So Dr. Evil actually created Atomu to replace the son that he had lost. But he realized that robots don't grow up. So guess what? And think of Pinocchio. He sold Atomu to a circus, a robot circus. And then there he languished for years doing robot things, hating life. And then Dr. Ochanomizu saved Atomu and turned him into a superhero. And from there on, there's like at least maybe, I would say 30 volumes of little books about Atomu and his antics and how he saved the world. And this guy is what I was talking about earlier, Blackjack. Blackjack is a brilliant and very gifted doctor, but he's not licensed. only in Japan, right? And, and he basically only performs surgery on patients that he deems worthy. So no matter how much money you stack in front of him, he will not operate on you unless he thinks that you're worthy. Right? So there's a whole story that goes in there about how he became that way, what's up with the scar in his face, and so on. So this doctor here actually saved Blackjack when he was a little boy, and I will not spoil your fun, because you really need to book one of his books, how he came that way. He saved his life. Pinko is his sidekick, and she was actually a part of his surgery that he performed on a conjoined twins. And again, I will not go into detail because will spoil your fun to discover what that is. And then this one is Moriko-san. Moriko-san was Blackjack's first love, and she eventually became Morito, a boy, after she had a surgery. So early on, you're gonna see a continuous theme of Tezuka. He was very open-minded. So imagine a transgender character developed, like, this is like, he came around in like 72, right? And then you're gonna also see what's interesting, the hero always has a sidekick, and sidekick is always a girl. Usually a little girl in this case, but girls with power, right? So if you remember, Uran was created by Dr. Osamu also as Atomu's sidekick, but she also has a power. Actually, yeah, she's a sister, considered sister Atomu, but she also has a phenomenal power. So back in 1958, when this cartoon was created, you really didn't have that kind of mentality where you have a girl empowerment. So I think it's kind of cool. This is the little boy, or little lion cub named Leo, and Americans, me as a young person in 1970, his name was Kimba the White Lion. I don't know which production company did the translation, but when I first saw it, I was like, that's Leo, that's his name. But that's how it goes, I guess, when things get marketed overseas. This is Panja. Panja is Leo's dad. And Mary is one of the hunter's daughter that came into Leo. So there's a whole story behind this story, I'll get in a minute. And she is the little lioness, eventually becomes Leo's wife. So what does this remind you of? Dustin's not here for me to ask and give grief to. Close, Lion King, that's right, yeah. And isn't it funny that this was developed in 1965, was the first large budget Japanese animation in the film length that came out. And I think it was also brought to the United States at some point. So we'll talk about how that worked out between this movie and the Disney and Imagineers. But I thought when Lion King came out, I'm like, they totally plagiarized Jungle Emperor. That's the name of the Japanese name of this cartoon. This one is another example of Tezuka's this really kind of an open-minded, the way he created characters. So this is Princess Sapphire, but she's also Prince Sapphire. So she was born a little girl, but because her father's concerned that he needed an heir, she is dressed up as a boy prince. And the whole story goes, about her having to hide her true self while, taking care of the evil people, making sure that the villagers are taken care of. And then meanwhile, you got Prince Franz, who met Sapphire at a forest, falls in love with her. So again, there's a whole story. To me, it's almost like Tootsie, right? Again, where else except Japan, where you could have a situation like that? This was in 1960s. So in a lot of ways, Tezuka was able to push forward this very equality-minded cartoon. And don't forget, these cartoons are being read by young kids like me. So we grew up thinking, this is how the world is, this is how things are. So in a lot of ways, it kind of provided us, the younger generation at the time, to think equality was just a normal thing. And then this little guy his name is Tink. So I guess this is, like, again, where Tezuka and Disney is going back and forth. Because remember Tink, right? Right? Tink, yeah. Like, so almost like a Peter Pan character. This is Opal, and this is another characteristic of Tezuka's animation where he'll bring in animals. Animals are almost like they have human qualities, human personality. So Opal was the best friend of Prince Sapphire, right? So if you see all the current Disney animation, you always see a character like they're animals, but they have a human personality. And you've seen, Hercules. Hercules had his favorite horse, Heracles, which was a horse just like him. If you have any questions, we have plenty of room to ask questions, so please ask. So this is where we talk about what was innovation, what was the contribution that Tezuka gave to the Japanese animation? So this is what's called yonkoma, and it's yon means four. So koma is grid, so you have four, right? So it's basically slapstick, quick gag, and then you start from here, little discussions, and you're done, right? So it's got to be this way. So most of these yonkoma was, I think, probably an influence from the Western comics that you've seen. And then it worked out. It's great, but a little boring. So Tezuka thought, you know what, I could do something better. So he started creating more of a storyline. And this is what his contribution was to manga, was he brought in a narrative, a longer narrative than just a slapstick gag, into the genre. So as you can see here, this is a yonkoma, the four grid. And then here, he started adding a little bit more storyline to it. And then one day, he's like, you know what? I'm just gonna just make it into 6, which he did here. And this, by the way, for you Astro Boy fans, this is the first Astro Boy prototype. In fact, his name is not Astro Boy or Atomu, but I guess his name is Atomu, but this is the original Astro Boy before it became, who he is now. And then I added these 3 different columns. This is from the Astro Boy, where when Astro Boy was created. This one is a column from I keep saying Jungle Emperor, but King by the White Lion. And then this one's from the Princess Knight. As you can see, this is 50s. You could tell he started using the columns, the layout, to make it a little bit more action-oriented. So it shows speed and more storytelling, right? And then he's starting to use the eyes, and I'll cover the eye in a minute too. And this is not a characteristic Tezuka's drawing, is that he loved animals. So a lot of his drawing, it's not angular, it's very rounded, right? Softer touch. And then the eyes, he used it purely for efficiency. He was a very prolific artist. He would create these manga for publication on a weekly basis, which is crazy, right? So he used the speed, the layouts, and the eyes to create efficiency so he could increase the output. And then here, he just started using more bold way to use a column to show the depth in the layout.
Was it all in newspapers, or was this dedicated?
So these were comic books. So before he got here, these were newspapers. And thanks for asking. And this was actually in a more of a weekly magazine, like Times Magazine. And then at this point, he was making enough money. He was able to convince publication to create a what's called the Akahon, Red Book, which was geared toward young kids, maybe 12 and under. That's what manga is. So manga was created with the customer focus being little kids. And then this is when he went completely off the chain here. So this is like one grid, right? Instead of 4, he just has 1 now. And I just put that in there because it's kind of funny, because it just reminds you of The Lion King, right? Even down to the cliff. So, yeah, one of these days I'm planning to go talk to Imagineers. Hey, just no harm, no foul. Just want to know, curious. And this is the full-on, Prince Sapphire. And again, I guess, throw I guess, the reasons out the window when you're reading these manga, and there's a reason for that too. And then I just want to just keep showing you, this is a blackjack, so this is all, before he passed away. You can see that his use of grid is getting really more refined. So, you show the eyes, the speed of the storyline going this way. This one, he start using the perspectives, right? So you go from here, far, getting closer. And I've not seen something like this in American comics, maybe in Marvel and actually in Batman. And next workshop, it'd be kind of interesting for the cover, put a comparison between here's Japanese anime and here's American anime, and see if this progression of use of these grid went along the same way. Maybe just that people got bored and started doing something, different innovation. And this is where one of his later works he did. And I love this part where the kid is losing his consciousness, but he's not only showing it visually, but he's also probably showing it from perspective, from inward to outward, where he loses consciousness. So a little bit more on the style innovation. You all know about the kawaii eyes, and I think a lot of the hit on the Eventbrite was because, oh, why did kawaii come? So Tezuka, at least in Japan, was the first person to use eye as not only to the window to the soul, but to show the emotion more efficiently. And then wide-eyed characters, it just seems more, I guess, inviting, right? Because people seem to enjoy playing with little kids. And again, he said that, but I think, this is just my personal opinion, but it was efficient display of expression. Again, he was so prolific, and he had such a hard deadline. He had to produce a certain amount of comics on a weekly basis. So he starts Monday, the due date was Friday, right? Because he had to publish on a Saturday. So the more he could do with less drawing and less grid, the better off he was. So I think he used this efficiency as a way that drove him to do more large, wide-eyed characters. This is his first character that he drew when he was 17. This is obviously more stylized now because this was redone when he was in late 30s. But it started out like this, just a dot, very efficient, right? And then this one, as you can see, he was also using glasses as a way to show people being smart. This is where he started using the big eyes. This guy, believe it or not, was modeled after his friend's grandfather. And you're going to see this guy throughout his entire work. He'll show up somewhere. It's called Hige no Oyaji. Yes?
So there are probably peers with Stan Lee and
That would be interesting, yeah. Yeah, so that's one thing, when I was doing research for this workshop, because I did have to go, find out, okay, here's what I'm thinking. That's what I want to do for next workshop next year, maybe do the comparison. Yeah, do Western and Japanese anime, and maybe even go deeper and say, okay, here's Stan Lee, here's Tezuka, let's do it and see what happens. That would be really interesting. Thank you so much. You guys know what this is? I'm dating myself. These are what admin office workers used to wear back in the day, not to dirty their sleeves. Yeah, that's right, back in the day, yeah. So here, remember this guy here? So when Tezuka started working with him, he started using more of the eyes to express, have him express himself. And he really couldn't quite get away from the first one he did, so this kid kind of stayed along. And then the glasses guy now gets a dot too. So you can see that how more expressive these eyes are providing the characters. This is one of the early drawings that he did when he was developing a copy, I guess, like a design book for Astro Boy and Udon. As you can see, he has a very detailed note on what the eyes should look like, and he starts out with an eye, always. Same thing with Udon. And this is another example of how that he starts with an eye. Well, yeah, he starts with the face, but then the eyes always have like maybe 4 components to show different expressions. More than you guys want to know at this point, right? It's like, okay, got it, got that with the eyes. Early drawings, again, I'm just kind of covering the eyes, because the eyes that he used for these are all little girls. But this one is more of a maybe teenagers, maybe late 20s. And you can start to see how he used the eyes to even kind of display their age. Yeah, maturity, thank you. And you're thinking, what about the guys? Same thing, guys get a little bit more, they get a really thick eyebrows, but they also get the expression too. So the more of these little iris stuff you see, the detail, if you can see the detail compared to this guy and this guy, this one's more detail. This one I threw in there because it's Triton. I did not know. I've forgotten that Tezuka did a whole series called the Triton of the Sea, and that this is a little Triton with his little sidekick, dolphin. And again, dolphin gets an eye too, so. And then more, because again, Tezuka loved animal characters. You know what this guy is? It's the Astro Cat. Dun, dun. I did not know this guy existed until when I was in researcher's workshop. And notice he goes into detail. He's even wearing the same belt as Astro Boy. These 2 guys are from the Jungle Emperor. And then this is Leo's son, Luke, another dolphin from Triton, one of the dog characters from his other series. This one is probably the first animal character he created, and I think this is very Disney-esque here. So there is a lot of back and forth influence going on. This one, I would say, as Stacy would mention, this is his mature women's eyes. And what I've noticed is that it's a little thinner. And then here, it's really interesting how he contrasts the black and white to show his, the eyes. And this is more of probably say, early 30s. And obviously this one's more younger, in mid-30s. So you're starting to see how he uses eye to even show, without talking about the age, you kind of see it. Okay, and then this legacy part here. So when World War II devastated the country, obviously, Japan, right, and everywhere else in the world. Tezuka was, I think he was about 13. No, actually, he was 17 when World War II was coming to an end. So he has seen the complete devastation of the war, right? He actually, I found out that, I should have known this, he actually grew up in the same neighborhood that my grandmother and my mom grew up in. So they might have been friends at one point, which is kind of scary. And my grandmother would, before she passed away, would talk about the war. Sometime good, sometime not so good. But I remember her telling me that after this one certain firebombing that happened, the only way that the family could find their way back to home was to walk along a train track, because everything else was just like burned to the ground. So they couldn't even tell, which way was which. So imagine, that's how he came out. So Tezuka always knew that what he wanted to do was provide hope and dreams to his generation, but the younger generation, having come out of this, mind-bending devastation called war. But the occupation force that came to Japan, called General Headquarters, GHQ, prohibited certain genre of manga, because they were afraid that, because manga was so popular at the time, that they were afraid that if they would do like the samurai genre, the knights in a shining armor, they were afraid that that was going to create an uprising within the young generation. It was that time of the of the era that was probably plausible. So they said, okay, no more samurai, no more anything to do with avenging the death of your lord. It's got to be something that's totally innocuous. So Tezuka's like, okay, well, technology. I like technology. So that's why he kind of pivoted to sci-fi. And then what happened was manga was boycotted by the educators. They're like, you can't possibly have these kids reading about animals that could talk or robots that are, had heart. You cannot do that. So there was an uprising among the educators in Osaka region where he lived, where they were trying to ban the books or the manga he was drawing. So he said, okay, I got it. So he did iterate many times over to at least stick with this principle as providing a kind of the genre that was provide a, something, a hope and a dream for little kids, but would also alleviate the pressure he was getting from the educators and the government. But that's kind of what became the groundwork for modern anime. So this is an example of his early works right after the war, and it's called The Lost World. But of course, in Japan, R as L, so that's why it says R. He meant lost, like. But already he's already illustrating the space, the space, right? So this is where he was starting to pivot toward more sci-fi and technology. And then here, he was already exploring travel to Mars. And this was, again, this was about, I would say, 1948-ish. So he's already thinking about this. And so it's kind of surprising to me that why would educators continue to, give Tezuka a hard time about creating a manga that's going to be a good read for the kids. So this is Astro Boy's, how he looks inside, right? And this is real popular in Japan, where they do a kind of exploded view of anything that's mechanical. This actually, I've been told by my uncle, led him to be an engineer. Because for little kids, like, this is really cool. Here's the eye, the searchlight, artificial voice box, electronic heart, engine, propulsion engine, hearing aid, and then here's a jet engine that's here, and just here for him to fly. So he's creating also just really iterating to make sure that it was interesting to the kids, but also not get too far off that the educators were coming down on them. This is after he pivoted to the medical cartoon or medical manga called Blackjack. So between the war, he became a medical doctor, licensed medical doctor, even though his character is not licensed. But then he was also continuing with his manga production, and he was pulled aside by his professor and said, "You're going to kill somebody. You should not be a doctor anymore, even though you're licensed. You should probably continue with manga." I guess you could say that just in Japan. So he stopped with his medical practice and continued with his manga. So when he had his the slump that I told you about, he went back and got all his medical notebook from his medical school days and created this manga, which became a phenomenal success. So the influence, I know I'm kind of jumping fast forward here, what this did, what Astro Boy created over many years led to this. This is a brand new show you can see on YouTube original. It's called Obsolete. Phenomenal, hyper detail. It's amazing. It's just, I love watching it. But this kind of anime would not have been possible without first Tezuka Osamu firing the imagination of the young kids who thought, you know what, I want to do something like that, and I want to do more of it. And then this is a little cheesy, I understand. But so the creation of Prince Sapphire and Princess Knight led to Sailor Moon, because it was okay to create a genre of cartoon or a manga that had a little girl as a superhero, right? So this, again, became a huge hit in Japan. I think he did like maybe, it's usually in 20, 25, 30 volumes. So this is very famous. I remember watching it when I was a kid too. And then, so when Sailor Moon eventually came along, they're like, oh yeah, no, of course, one girl hero, of course there is. Another of his Tezuka's legacy is his love for future development. He did it out of necessity because he had this, he was the first tenant of this studio apartment, 250 square feet, no AC, typical Japan, right? So basically, you shared a bathroom, kitchen, and whatever. But because he was at this point fairly famous because of Astro Boy, all these other younger anime characters or anime artists wanted to come live in the same place that he was. So this became like a little miniature incubator where he provided mentoring, instructions, introduction to publishers, and all of these guys became a success. And I'll show you what they did. So, okay, I'll show you the place first. This is where Tezuka lived, and all these little, this is like super small. This is actually a museum now. If you see it, it's super tiny. It's like smaller than a studio, like maybe like a one-bedroom size. But that's where they worked together, they lived together, they drank together, took a bath together, and they became just super close. And I think his original protege was about 8 kids, because they were kids. They all became very famous manga artists themselves, and then they, in turn, mentor more kids, and that's how his legacy is enduring even to now. So you probably know this guy, Doraemon. Doraemon was one of the characters of one of his proteges. Again, you're my age. Masked Rider is a hugely famous among us. Bakabon is a gag. So you had the superhero guy. This was the only woman protege he had. This one and this one, interestingly enough, was a male manga artist, but because he took Tezuka's example of creating Princess Knight, he's like, yeah, of course, I'm gonna create Magician Sally. So again, if you ask someone my age, hey, sing the Magic Sally song, I could do it in a heartbeat. It was that popular. And then this is another one, Secret of Aqua-chan. Again, I don't remember the theme for this one, but I could sing you this one, like by heart. And this one is also a Iron Man 28. So I think there was a Iron Man Western cartoon. I can't remember what it was. Iron Giant, I think it was called. So that's what reminds me of that one. But all these guys, came along because of Tezuka. Because being good enough wasn't going to lead to publications. So Tezuka, being a prolific guy, goes, hey, I can meet the deadline, but how about if you talk to this guy? Maybe he could add to your magazine. So that's how he helped him out. So these guys are all results. So it started out with the Astro Boy that led to, the Masked Rider. And Masked Rider then is, if you go to Comic-Con, you'll probably see the latest one. I think they're on like the 20th generation of Kamen Riders because they all, every few years they're gonna come up with a new one. The Iron Giant became Majin Gazetto, which is, I think, having a recent resurgence. Because whereas Astro Boy had a heart of a boy and was, pretty independent, Mazinga had to have like a little helicopter here with a human in it. So it wasn't quite, quite autonomous. This guy led to Kashan, and then Gatchaman, and you guys all probably remember Speed Racer. I remember it was a Maha Go-Go, and I could probably sing you a song if you like. But that led to Evangelion, which is hugely popular right now. And also, this one and this one, Ghost in the Shell. And this is the original, the first cover of the Ghost in the Shell in manga. And this guy was interesting because he actually was a protege of this guy. So Tezuka, this guy, and this guy. And he did not have a publisher. He actually published his, self-published his first book. So it was one of the only time in the recent anime history where he was discovered. He was not necessarily discovered. He just self-published his anime, and that blew up. And so that led to this. So you guys know Akira also, another one of the major hits that, that came to, from Japan to the United States. And he was a protege of, I think this guy. It goes this way. And then this one was interesting. the creator of the Goku, of the Dragon Ball Z, said, you know what? Goku's hair was modeled after Osamu, the Astro Boy, which I did not know, but that was kind of cool. This was on Twitter the other a few weeks back. Industry pioneer. So I'll talk about the difference, right? So manga, as I said, came from what's called the Red Book. The akahon was developed between 1930s and 1940s, and it was targeted toward little kids, you know, boys and girls 12 and under. Manga came and took place of akahon, right? Because akahon, don't forget, was like a four yonkoma, the 4 grids. So manga was more of a story narrative, longer character development, and all that. And then Gekiga came along, and I'll cover that in a minute. Gekiga was more mature audience, not quite Adult Swim, but Gekiga was maybe 16, boys 16 and over. It was usually all boys. Very violent, very bloody, something that was completely different from Tezuka. In fact, Tezuka actually railed against it because he thought that, you know, we can't have these violent Gekiga, because that's really going against what he thought the artist should be providing young kids, right? But then Gekiga was created by post-World War II kids, so not someone that went through World War II, so maybe they have a different outlook. So you put these together, and you have anime. So someone asked me, goes, what's the difference? Because, you know, anime is, yeah, so just an all combination of that. That's what it is. That's what we know what it to be now. So what he did, how did he ignite the industry? Back in 1960s, there was no manga artist that had his own production company. They're all very beholden to the publishers, right? Their whims. So Tezuka said, you know what, I'm gonna create my own production company. So in 1962, he created Mushi Production, Tezuka Productions, and then he started experimenting with short films. Once he started doing short films, he said, you know what, I'm gonna do television series, which really angered the movie production companies like Toei, because Toei was thinking about doing TV production, but Tezuka came in and just did it, and that was the Astro Boy. And after he did Astro Boy in 1965, he's like, well, I want to do a full feature film, and that's what the Jungle Emperor or the King by the White Lion was. And then he also used, like I said, I kind of misworded this, but throughout he was very equal on who the starring role had, the character. He called them stars, like a human stars. So you always had, yeah.
Sorry, was Miyazaki here as well?
I'm gonna get to that. Okay. Yes. Yes and no. And then there's also a Miyazaki book out there too. I have yeah, I have 2 slides on that one. So this is, after he started his production company, he created this. This is on YouTube if you kind of want to take a look at it. It's called the Arumachi no Monogatari, which means like a story on a story from a street corner. Very colorful, kind of a little avant-garde-ish, but it was the first 30-minute commercial anime in Japan, and he did it through his own production company. Then obviously, you know, he did the TV series called Astro Boy, which, by the way, he did it with next to nothing. He said he just told the TV company called Fuji TV, said, hey, I'll do it. I want to do it. I'm going to do it. And at that point, he had a pretty good royalty coming in from his other works. He's like, I don't care how much it costs. I'm doing the production. I'll make it happen. And it's like, you know, Mr. Tezuka, this is like a weekly series. He's like, nope, done. Which angered the Toei film production company, where Miyazaki was working at the time. So that's one of the start of their little differences. He eventually did create this movie called Phoenix, but he died before this was completely done. So you could see part of it on YouTube, and the book's amazing. The theme is really out there, so it might just take one workshop to talk about it, but it was one of his last works. So all throughout, he's making money. He's got the production company. You know, he's made his full feature movie. He got the TV series that's been amazing. But he's starting to see that his protégés are doing really well. They're right at his heel, right? So he was like, what is this? And it was called, that's the rise of Gekiga, the mature audience, right? What was happening at the time, this is 1960 in Japan, and as with the United States, there was all this social unrest, the labor issues, the equal pay, Korean wars and all that happening, beginning of Vietnam, a lot of unrest. So I think the people just wanted something more, I don't know, a little bit more different, not happy, animals talking. They wanted something more, I guess, graphic or different, I guess, just different. So, but Tezuka almost didn't make the transition because he's thinking, what, I'm doing well, so why would I want to change this type of audience? But I think he realized he needed to pivot. This is where he was like not doing customer discovery. So this is what Gekiga is. I don't know if you guys seen this. This is Go 13, one of the most famous Gekiga, very violent. It's about an assassin that goes around the world, assassinating people. This is Tomorrow's Joe, boxing, so obviously very violent, very graphic. This is the star of Giants, Koji no Hoshi, about a pitcher who goes through this completely masochistic training to become the star. And this one was the only one that Tezuka liked. It's called The Sign is V, and it's based on an Olympic entry from Japan. This is the area when I think the Japanese got a first gold medal in women's volleyball. So he did pivot because he had to, right? He could not stop the rise and the tide of Gekiga. So he said, okay, I'm gonna go back to what I know as a medical doctor. I'll use that as a basis for Gekiga pivot. So very mature theme. Like I said, it's about an unlicensed doctor who does this amazingly complicated surgery on people he seems worthy. And then on the layout, he's very, very dynamic and very graphic, right? And then, like I said, hyper detailed. But what it did do though, it introduced medical profession to thousands of young Japanese kids. So during my research, I found out there was a bunch of testimonial on YouTube. It's like, you know what? I became a doctor because I read this. In fact, I still read it. And these are medical doctors, so it's pretty cool. And it was a huge success. In fact, it was such a success, as I mentioned, even after he died, the genre, the theme is continuing. Characters still around. They just did a full exhibit at the Tezuka Museum in Japan. And then his next episode is being created through use of AI. So this is Disney. So Walt Disney had a huge impact on Tezuka. And in fact, this actually book was written by Tezuka Osamu about Walt Disney. It's not, you cannot buy it right now because of, I'm sure there's like a multiple copyright, international and domestic. But, so, this is where it kind of goes back and forth, right? Circle of life, literally. So in 1942, Bambi came out. The eyes, notice, the animals, cutesy animals, fluffy and whatnot. He watched it, Tezuka watched it 80 times. So even though he may say, I didn't copy it, he might have just ingested it, all the techniques. And in 1950, he came out with the Jungle Emperor, or King by the White Lion. So, 1965, we come up with the full feature movie, and in 1994, here we are. So it's almost like a full circle, but it's all, to me, it's all give and take. So Tezuka was influenced by Disney. The Disney Imagineers were influenced by Tezuka, so it's all literally, Should we just start in Circle of Life now? No, Jen? Jen said no. And then, he had to leave, but the Tezuka and Miyazaki, you all know who Miyazaki Hayato is, right? He's the founder of Ghibli Studio. I love Ghibli, my daughter does too. But when Tezuka died, Miyazaki actually made a statement, which is fairly famous, because I remember it too. He's like, there's not a one thing Tezuka Osamu contributed to Japanese animation. And you're thinking, why would he say that, right? So I started thinking, why would he say that too? So I started kind of diving deep into Miyazaki's biography. And because I know a lot about Tezuka, but I didn't know about him. I just know his work. Miyazaki is an impressionist. And Tezuka just like simplified design. So when I read that, I go, oh, that makes sense now. That's why he doesn't like Tezuka's work. Whereas Miyazaki had a team of people doing extended production. In fact, he told one of the vendors, if you want something from us, it's going to take 3 months. Because don't forget, he worked for a movie company, right? He worked in a corporation. Tezuka, fast and furious, he said, hey, I'll do 50 pages in a week. Because he was an entrepreneur, right? He's a startup guy. So I think it came down to me, Miyazaki's establishment. He was a scrappy startup guy. Big budget, didn't have a budget because he didn't need it, because he just said, I'll just use my royalty to pay, to bankroll whatever the project I'm doing. So if you know his work, Totoro, you guys know Totoro? If you think of Miyazaki Totoro, it makes perfect sense because he is Atomu. So imagine Astro Boy and Totoro going at each other. I'm like, oh, of course, they're never gonna get along. So that's kind of what it came down to. But they did share one thing. And this is actually a drawing that Tezuka did as a biographical cartoon series. He called that the Fortress of Paper. This is a devastation after the firebomb in Osaka, where they conscripted young school kids to build weapons, right? Because most of the adults were actually at war. And so Miyazaki and Tezuka both were very heavily affected by World War II. But they took it differently, how they used that to create their art. So, but at the end of the day, I think they both were trying to create a work that's going to provide hope and just have kids being kids. So I think in the end, they're both great people. I'm just sorry that they couldn't get along or get their difference together. It's also interesting that whereas Tezuka's family lost everything in the war, but Miyazaki's, they lived in different locations, so they did not lose everything. And it's also interesting that Miyazaki's family is a scion of a company that made the Zero Fighters. So if you guys saw not the latest movie he has, the Heron, the Boy of Heron or something. So the last 2 movies he did, one was a anime about the designer of the Zero Fighter, and the current one is about World War II. So it'd be interesting to see what he comes up next, because it's starting to go back to, he's starting to kind of go inward to see, maybe kind of exercise his own demon within. But whereas Tezuka did it differently, maybe that's what Miyazaki's doing it too. I know it's kind of super philosophical, but that's my thoughts. So anyway, so legacy, or the storytelling, the influence, his focus on science fiction and tech. I can't tell you without showing you the slide again how much of an effect that Tezuka Osamu's Astro Boy had on the psyche of little kids. Because if you see any anime coming out of Japan right now, it all has an element of robotics, right? Technology, really far out emerging technology. It all came out, I believe, because of Tezuka's, kind of far-reaching influence he had. He may not have thought of it. All he did was create a little robot that loved people and then had a heart. But that's all led to everything else now. So before, he died of stomach cancer in 1989, and right after his surgery, against the advice from his doctor and his family, he traveled from Tokyo to Osaka to talk to the elementary school kids for the last time. And it's a school that he attended as a child. And he said, I want you guys to remember 3 things. Be curious, and it doesn't matter, just be curious everything. It doesn't have to be anything, just be super curious. Always ask questions, go down the rabbit hole, just go out there and just find something that you love and go and be, continue on with it. And it's this one thing he said, I had a hard time translating what he said about adversity. He said, find one thing that's gonna shock you, one event that completely shocks you, but then remember that and hold it near and dear to your heart, because that's gonna eventually provide you a benefit. And I'm still trying to figure out what he meant by that, but it may be resiliency. Adversity could be also turned into an opportunity for some, right? And then he said, cherish life. And after all he's gone through, and again, I didn't even go into detail of the war, what he went through during the war, because there's another culture, crazy culture back then, another 2 hours required for that, what happened to the young kids in Japan during World War II. Like my mom, he and my mom were about the same age. So my mom would tell me the stories of the kids will go to school. They'll go to elementary school, high school, right? But when they got to high school, they march off to factory to build, bullets, aircraft parts. And in the afternoon, they have a physical training, and that consisted of, okay, here's a bamboo stick that we cut and made it pointy on the front, on the tip, and you're going to use that against the Americans and British when they invade the country. And it's crazy, but that was normal for these kids. And they're always being told, to be ready to die for the country. So in a sense, having seen someone like my mom and Tezuka go through all that, but yet still have enough of a hope and dream to create a wonderful art, that was kind of cool. But I think that's what he's trying to convey to the kids that he spoke to. Just be, cherish life. And I thought it was very interesting that he mentioned curiosity. That's what Steve Jobs also said too. Stay curious, right? Anyway. So that's it. This is Tezuka going off in the sunset with all his characters. Some I didn't cover. But you got, you got the princess, you got that Leo, Astro Boy, a couple others I didn't mention, but yeah. Anyway. Yeah, thanks. Do you have any questions? This, by the way, is the Atomu, Captain Atomu, the first Atomu. And Astro Boy was basically his brother or something. But they loved Astro Boy so much, this became that. And this here is another character you probably don't know about, is Cobalt. Cobalt is a big brother of Atom, or Astro Boy. And then, of course, here's another shot of Astro Cat. I did not know about this guy. I mean, I'm a huge Astro Boy fan. And I go, wait, who's this guy? Is this and they go, oh, it's Cobalt. Did you not know? And I'm like, no, I'm sorry, I did not know that. Yeah, so. And then, again, this is the first one that they did. I don't know why he's wearing clothes. But I'm sure it's in a book, I'm sure. Yeah. Anyway, so thank you so much for coming out. Please fill out, yes, question.
Oh, yeah. I don't know, maybe this is a dumb question.
Yeah.
You said that a lot of Japanese works cover robotics, technology, like people and machines, and that goes back to Astro Boy. Part of me wonders, the way I think my generation maybe look at things in Japan, especially during the back half of the 20th century, would be as a big electronics manufacturer. And part of me is wondering if that might be an influence that led to both Astro Boy and those later works.
It's possible.
Like a combination.
Yeah, it's a lot of combination, and I don't want to bring up the defense industrial complex, but that had a lot to do with it also, because believe it or not, if you guys ever get a chance to go to Kyushu or Hiroshima, there's an island called Kure Island, right, or Kure region. It's about a quick train ride from Hiroshima, but Yamato, Imperial Japanese ship Yamato was built there. Yamato, when it was built in late 1940s, before World War II was over, was probably one of the most advanced battleship in the world, right? So the propulsion system that was on top of Yamato that sent out the little patrol plane, they used that technology for the bullet train. They already had a single reflex lenses that became cameras. So a lot of the battle technology, war technology, unfortunately, led to the resurgence of Japanese economy and, like you say, electronics. So that has something to do with it too. And I think even though Tezuka probably never admitted, that might have something to do with it too, because he was actually working in a factory, making components. Yeah. But yeah, it's a great insight though. Thank you. Yeah. Well, thanks for coming out. Thank you. Yay.